Okaeri, welcome back to my channel, Made Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we're going to be doing my summer wrap-up. So starting in the summer, I changed my TBR structure to be season-based because the monthly schedule, while it really works for my checkboxy brain, it was not working for my current life. So I changed the schedule to be seasonal about halfway through summer. So this is only about a month and a half of reading time. But I will also put a disclaimer out there that I did not have a lot of reading time, and actually at this point in my life I don't have a lot of reading time. So these wrap-ups might not have as many books as you guys are accustomed to seeing, but I think it's really important to keep making content and talking about these parts of our reading life to normalize that sometimes reading can't be our priority if we have other things going on. And that needs to be seen, I think, by people in this space to make them feel not so alone if they're going through a moment like that themselves. So in that vein, if you'll humor me, I'll talk a little bit about the life changes that have happened recently, and then we'll get to the books. As always, there will be chapters, for this video. So if you're really not interested in my daily kind of personal life, you can skip ahead to the book talk. But I'm just going to give you guys a couple updates. The first thing that has changed that began in summer is I got 2 jobs in addition to YouTube. So technically I have 3 jobs right now. YouTube is not, a full-time job, but I do make money from this, enough to do some kind of grocery shopping here and there, that kind of thing. I also have a group of lovely patrons that I've gotten really close to, and I want to keep providing content for them on a regular basis. So while this isn't a job in the sense that is my main income, it is something that I dedicate a lot of time to. The other 2 jobs that I got are individually part-time, and initially I was only going to have one of those jobs so that I could balance having my daughter not in nursery school full-time. But then this other job, the opportunity presented itself for me to try out a new job sector and one that I was really interested in, and it turns out that I actually really like it. So I've been picking up a couple more hours there. So balancing 2 part-time jobs, which has kind of become a full-time job at this point, if you add the hours up, plus YouTube, plus my daughter, who is just turning 1 year and 5 months now, which is insane. She is one of the most active children in the entire world, and I love that for her, but she also keeps me very busy. So I've just got a lot of moving parts going on right now. Hayato and I have also gotten some big news for his visa, and it looks like we are going to be making the move to the States in 2025. That does mean we'll be leaving Japan, and it's a very bittersweet feeling. It's something that we've planned to do for a really long time, and I do feel in my heart it is the right choice for our family currently. But it does mean that our home base will be switching. There's a lot of positives and negatives to that change, but we have to prepare for that as well. There's a lot of preparation that goes into moving across the world. So there's just a lot happening. That's kind of the overall landscape. And now to talk about what happened in the time frame of my summer reading. July was one of the most stressful months I think I've ever had in my life. I found out I need ankle surgery, which I'm probably going to be getting at the end of this year. COVID made its rounds through the family. I was the only one who didn't get COVID, although I did get sick. I wasn't part of the rounds that I made, but it did mean that childcare wasn't available from other members of the family as it usually would be. So there was that as well. Sumire also got croup, which is one of the scariest sounding sicknesses, even though it's not quite as bad as it sounds, I learned once she got it. I talk about that more in the reading vlog I was doing during that time, so I'll have that link down below if you'd like to hear more about that. She's perfectly fine now, but it was a very scary time frame. And then on top of that, which is a good thing, but Worldcon was the first 2 weeks of August. So there was a big chunk of time of preparation for that, childcare, all of that, setting that up before I went. And then the 2 weeks at Worldcon, well, I say 2 weeks. It was about a week and a half overall, but if you include the prep to go there, coming back, adjusting to work schedules, I say it was about 2 weeks. So ironically, I almost got 0 reading done during that time because I was so busy doing things about books other than reading them, which, yeah, it's kind of silly, but that is what happened. So with all of those life updates and disclaimers out of the way, let's talk about the 2 books that I read for the second half of summer in a month and a half. The first one is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. That was 4.5 stars for me in the end. I adored this book. I could not put it down when I had it in my hands. I read this as part of the Only Good Book Club. Actually, both of these books I read for the Only Good Book Club, which is the private book club that I'm a part of. It's one of the only things that I really dedicate myself to and keep up with even when I'm not actively reading so much, that and being a SPIFBO judge. So when we kind of all touched base on this book at the end, after reading it, pretty much everyone else was like, this book was not for me. They found it quite boring. They really weren't engaged with it. And I don't know what it was, but I was into it. Those parts, I can see why someone would find them boring, like exploring the labyrinth of the library. And there were a lot of larger plot points that didn't get focused on in the way that I think would have made it a bit more engaging. But I loved the themes. I loved the way it was handled. It was just really enjoyable for me. I loved the idea of information access. That was a theme that was really mentioned there. And I liked how the library was a bit more realistic. I usually thoroughly enjoy cozy fantasy, the idea of a book about a book. I enjoy that as much as the next bookworm. But something about the way Lawrence approached this, like, where are you going to go to the bathroom when you're in a labyrinth of books that takes days to go from one section to another, right? I just really enjoyed that kind of more realistic take on something that usually is quite whimsical. So I think if you're in the mood for this whimsical magical library, this is not going to hit that for you. But if you want a more realistic, kind of grittier, real-world version of what that might be, the environment in this book is going to be perfect. I also found the writing to be beautiful. I was highlighting the shit out of my Kindle edition of this book. And with the other Lawrence books that I've read, which is only the Book of the Ancestor trilogy right now, there were a lot of elements that I really enjoyed about that, like the fight scenes. I've been screaming for years that those need an adaptation because they would look, so good on screen. His fight scenes are so dynamic. I loved the way that he played with like timelines, things like that. But the actual prose, the writing, didn't really stick out to me. But in this book, I was highlighting the shit out of it. I loved the writing in this book. I also loved the plot twists at the end. One I kind of saw coming, but it was different enough from what I expected that I was still very intrigued by the shift. And I cannot wait to continue the series. The second book has had, mixed reception, whereas the first book was pretty much universally loved, which is why I'm like, why am I recommending this to you? I'm one of the last people in this entire community to read it. But I do plan to continue with the series. She says as she, has her series completion goal, which is not going so well anyway, I do plan to continue the series. And I hope that I like the second book as much as the first, because it seems like it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Polarizing. So we'll see. But 4.5 stars for the first book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The second book I read was Seasons of Migration to the North. Again, this was also for the Only Good Book Club. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the book club is all of us read very different types of books. And so when we take each person's recommendation via a random number generator, we get really different things and things that I wouldn't have picked up otherwise. So I had never even heard this book before it was picked for the group. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is a classic post-colonial Arabic novel, and the author is Sudanese. And it incorporates a lot of the events happening around the time that it was written, or the time that it takes place. So it's a very contextual novel in the way that colonialism had affected the Middle East at that time. And so we follow our main character, I don't remember names, but we follow our main character, I never do. And I think he's unnamed in this book. Yeah, he is unnamed, so I have a reason this time, but our narrator, our main narrative voice is unnamed, and we follow his perspective as he meets this person who has had a very extraordinary life. It's not very long, so I don't want to talk about too many details, but as he finds out more about this particular person and his history, we get a lot of reflections on how colonialism seeps into not just the large picture, but the individual lives of people, and how those larger themes can seep into a daily life, and how it can affect that person in what they value and what they decide to prioritize. This novel also deals a lot with the themes of personal responsibility versus the environment that you're in affecting the choices that you make, and which one is kind of a heavier influence, or is one heavier than the other. It's not a happy book. It is beautifully written, and I do think that the way that the author plays with flashbacks and the sense of time is very effective, but it's not going to be a book that you're going to read and just like, you know, la-di-da, like enjoy it as a casual light read. It is heavy, deals with heavier themes, and it's quite sad, really. But it shows a lot of skill in how the author was able to interweave all of these different perspectives and timelines and aspects of the environment that they're writing in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels cohesive, it feels like it all matches together. And it's going to give you some things to think about. One thing that really bothered me though, just a little tidbit, is that apparently you can't buy this in Arabic right now. You can only buy it in English. And something about not being able to purchase or find this book in its original tongue bothers me immensely. And it really seems to fit some of the themes that are in the book itself. So that's just a little tidbit that bothered me, and I just kind of wanted to complain about that here. So overall, I had a 4.5 and a 5-star read. Two very different, disparate stories, but I enjoyed both of them for what they did well. While I am still going to be, and have been, extremely busy in the fall time frame for my reading as well, I do plan to do a couple things to kind of help myself fall back in love with reading and make time for it. I found that I wasn't really setting the scene as I used to. Like, I used to cozy up in my little corner and get some tea and you know, put some lo-fi music with some ambiance on in the background and really settle in and read for an hour or so. And I haven't really been doing that. I've been trying to read a chapter or two before bed, and while that is a good thing to do, I think that I haven't been treating myself to the experience of reading in the way that I used to, and I want to make time for that. So instead of trying to read a chapter or two before my eyes close at night, if I can make a point to clear a space on my couch, sit down and read for about an hour before bed, shift some things around so I have the space for that, and I can have a little nightcap, you know, while I read. I really want to make that time for myself, if I can, at least twice a week. Hopefully that will help me get some more reading done, because while I don't need to read more than 2 books in order to keep up with the Joneses, I personally want to be reading more because I find that it makes me less stressed, it gives me time to check out from everything else that I'm doing. It's just good for my mental health. So I want to try to prioritize it for myself. This is a long video for only talking about 2 books, so let me know in the comments down below anything you've read recently. If you've read either of the books that I talked about, I would love to hear anything that you've got to say. Let's chat. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell. I'd love to have you as part of this community, and I appreciate it. But for now, I'm gonna head out. Jane!